Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Empowering Women podcast, where we trade burnout for boldness and leadership for life with purpose. And boy, are you in for a treat today. Today's guest is someone who brings the fire and the finesse. Jennifer Black, a personal friend of mine. She is a powerhouse in engineering and project management. And she proves that grit, grace, and a well-timed dad pep talk can launch a remarkable career. She's a passionate mentor, a STEM advocate, and let's be honest, she's probably the calmest person you'd want around in a project when everything is on fire, and maybe even just life itself. So we'll talk about persistence, passion, positivity, and why sometimes the scenic route in your career is the one that leads straight to joy. So let's dive in with Jennifer. So welcome, Jennifer, to the podcast. It is so amazing to have you here today.
Thanks, Shannon. It's really good to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And I appreciate the friendship, the mentorship, the everything that you bring to business and life. Thank you.
That's so kind. Yeah, so Jennifer and I have decided really quickly that we're distant related somewhere. We found out we have a lot in common, so I'm a little bit biased today. But let's start with her story. She was a swimming scholar, and she's turned into an engineering powerhouse. So I want to know, Jennifer, what moments shaped your journey, and what ultimately lit the fire that brought you to where you are today?
So, Shannon, as we've talked in the past, my dad was a very big part of my life growing up. He was an engineer. He encouraged me to go into engineering, although he never said, you need to be an engineer. He told me that I needed to find a career that would allow me to do things that I liked doing, but also that I could support myself in the way that I wanted to be supported. So find something where, you can make the money that you need to live the life you want to live.
It's really good advice, because I think all the time people say, well, follow your passion. And that's true, right, to an extent.
Yep.
But you do need to find a way through the things that you love and things that will obviously provide a fruitful life for you. So that is so true. I'm going to start off with a commencement speech. So I'm going to give a little background to this story really quick. So we are in an empowerment circle together at our employer. And she shared with me how we were going to have a talk on grit as part of our empowerment circle. And I got this wonderful email from Jennifer, and she gave a commencement speech at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. And in this speech, she talks about a pivotal phone call she made to her dad. And in this call, if I'm right, Jennifer, you were like, I'm done. I'm coming home. I can't take this anymore. But he told you to muscle through it, which to me feels like a defining moment. How did that experience shape your resilience and your leadership style later in life?
So when I called home on that day, I did tell my dad, I'm coming home. I don't like it here. I'm 8 hours away from home. I'm away from everything I know. I'm going to move back home, and I'm going to go to school close to home.
And there wasn't very many women in your curriculum, correct?
Nope, there were 4 women in engineering, so not a lot of women. And he said, well, you can come back home, but you're not living at home. And I'm not paying for your education, so you're going to have to figure it out. And at that moment, I realized that I better make it work, because I wouldn't have a place to live. And so every time I get into a difficult decision or a difficult place, I remember that conversation, because that was devastating to me. I couldn't believe that he wasn't going to let me come home. And it shaped how I handle different things. I tend to take a look at things 3 or 4 times before, well, I never give up, but I might have to find a different way to do something, because I just can't figure out how to do it that way.
Right. Yeah, I think that's so true, because sometimes we think, oh, I need to go in or out this door. And an old coach or mentor of mine told me, when the door shuts, maybe a window opens. So maybe to your point, Jennifer, you got to take a hard left or a hard right and do it a different way.
Yeah. Or you might have to start all over again. Um, a
Yep.
funny, a funny story. My husband's a hunter, and when I had my first son, I had ordered a crib. Wasn't online, but I got it through a store, and you had to assemble it.
Mm.
And I decided I needed it assembled, and my husband was going hunting, and he's like, "Well, I'm not assembling it. You have to figure out how." And, the directions weren't great. And I started it and I spent like 2 hours and I got it together and the drawer in the thing wouldn't work. And I'm like, I put it together backwards. So
Oh no.
in order to fix it, I had to take the whole thing apart in order to get it fixed. But I wasn't going to give up. I was just going to redo.
That is so funny. But I would imagine those lessons, and you're a principal project manager today. And
Hmm.
I'm imagine that lessons come in handy more than once.
Absolutely, because there are always unexpected problems that pop up that you need to figure out. And a lot of times it's brainstorming with a whole group and drawing them into that conversation because as a project manager, you don't have all the answers, but you
Mm.
figure out who could and you get them together so that you can solve problems.
Yeah. I like that. Your used community. And that after our conversation, Jennifer, was one of the things that maybe we'll come back to in a future circle. I feel like we think grit is a solo sport, and I don't think it is. I think grit is a team sport, either your project team or your supporting community, either at home or at work. I feel like it's a team sport, not a solo sport.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in this same speech, so this is actually how I got the email. We were talking about grit, and she was like, Shannon, like when I saw your email about what we were going to talk about, I had like instant, I guess, playback to this speech. And in that speech, you call it your 3P method of persistence, positivity, and passion. So can you break those down for our listeners and how they've helped you navigate the challenges of a more male dominated industry?
A lot of times what I have experienced are roadblocks. So I've had roadblocks in my career. I've had roadblocks in projects, and the only way to get past them is persistence. And sometimes it means that you have to go around, do something different. Maybe it's change total direction, but you need to be persistent. And so persistence, whether it be in school when I got a bad grade or in a project where something didn't go exactly right, if you weren't persistent you weren't going to be able to move forward. So persistence has always been something big for me. Positivity, what I found is a lot of people, they don't like being around people, one, that are negative. It
Mm-mm.
kind of sets a tone for just a bad day or even a bad project. Because if you come in saying, well, I don't know how we're going to get this done, everyone starts
Yeah, the whole team's like,
believing.
well, I'm done. We're going home.
Yeah, yeah, everyone starts believing that it can't be done. And so if you come in, there's always something that you can take out of something that's positive. And so look at things positive, give those examples. And when you do that, everyone else tends to start believing in themselves and thinking that way. So positivity has always been a part of like who I am. And then
Yeah.
passion is, you have to have passion in what you're doing. You have to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, you typically um, maybe not be able to get that positivity and maybe not be as persistent because you don't like what you're doing. And so I always say that if you can find passion in a job, that you will figure out how to be successful or in
That
life,
is so
passion in
true.
life.
And it's actually part of our circle that day about
Yep.
finding things that I think Angela Duckworth calls it that you're fascinated with. And I'll
Yeah.
include a link to the two talks that we watched as part of our circle if our listeners are interested. But I feel like that's true. Like when you become fascinated with something, and it could be silly, could be a
Yeah.
personal hobby or professional, you do get passionate about it, even if it's for a short period of time.
Absolutely.
I love the positivity thing. So I'm gonna go on a slight tangent here. So I found a TED talk. I shared it actually just today or our recording day on LinkedIn, and it was called the three secrets to resilience. I think I'll put
Yes.
a link in the show notes. But her three secrets are this. I can't remember the lady's name right now, but they were resilient people understand that crap happens. So
Yep.
they kind of avoid the poor, it's the persistence part of your story. They avoid the poor, pitiful me syndrome, I'll call it, at least
Mhm.
consistency. They're able to pull that out. Um, I'm trying to think. The second one was, I know the third one. Third one's my favorite. Although the second one was they're able to really understand where to focus their attention. It gets into your positivity piece because it talks about how you can find the good. Even
Yep.
she tells a pretty tragic story in the TED Talk, and she talks about how you find the good and positivity in whatever circumstance you're in. And the last one was the one that blew me away. I'm gonna write this like really big on my monitor. It says, "Am I doing what am I? The thing that I'm doing, is it helping me or hurting me?"
Yep.
And I was
I
like, "Oh wow."
listened to that this morning when I saw your post on LinkedIn. Shannon posts every single day, and I love reading her posts. A lot of times it energizes me. This one
Oh.
was I found it really inspiring because the woman that was talking in the TED Talk lost a daughter when she was
Mm-hmm.
her daughter when she was 12, and I really liked the second one. I think was in addition to what you said was redirecting your
Mm.
energy towards something else because she said that she had two other children, boys,
Yep.
and she found that if she directed her energy towards them, it helped with some of the pain and emotions from losing
Yep.
her daughter.
Yeah.
So
It was where you focus your attention, I think.
yeah,
I didn't
yep,
say that very well, but yeah.
yeah. So I found it really great.
It's a tad longer TED Talk at like 16-ish minutes, but I think it's a good listen.
It is. It is. I agree.
It moved up really far. I'm a TED nerd. It moved pretty far up in my TED Talk list. So,
Yeah, I liked it.
um, well, you talked about passion, and I think passion is a lot of what's led you to where you are today. Um, what does working hard at work worth doing look like in your world? Like, how can people find their own version of that, like their own passion in their current career?
So I really like to lead by example. And I think that if I show passion in what I'm doing and enjoyment in what I'm doing, and also things that you can maybe not do in your everyday job, but you can add to your everyday job. And what I mean by that is I do a lot of work at Iowa State and University of Wisconsin Platteville. And I love going onto those campuses and
Mm.
experiencing, what it's like to be a student again. Because college for me, I loved
It was
college.
a few years ago, right, Jennifer?
Yeah, yeah, it was a long time ago. But I like seeing all this I want to say pent up desire, but it's like enthusiasm for what their next steps are. And that to me is really exciting. And it brings me back to being that student and thinking about all the things that I could accomplish. So I like to show that to the people that are around me, especially the women, but also men. They can learn something from passion and positivity and just projecting that kind of work ethic, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think you can always put a flavor on a role, to your point, whether it's inside the organization or outside, that taps into your passion and purpose.
Yes, yes.
And just to be honest, Jennifer, when you and I have had conversations about things that you're working on in your day job, you can see the passion come through. I think one thing you do really well is show a link. Like you're working on some more, I'm going to call it critical markets for the
Hmm.
company. And I can see that come through, like the customer satisfaction. Do you feel like that's true?
Absolutely. I always considered myself a people pleaser,
Mm,
and I do try and please people, but I also want customers to have a good experience. And whether that's an internal customer or an external customer, these projects I'm working on are going to impact external customers, very large customers. And so everything that we produce as Trane Technologies, I want to be quality. And whether that's quality from the interaction that I have or quality in the product, that's very important to me.
Yeah, because it all connects back to people for you. For me,
Yep.
the time that we've had a chance to get to know each other, Jennifer, for me, it all connects back to people for you, whether it's giving back to others, whether it's you satisfying customers, making sure that the product that you help produce helps people have a better environment wherever they're working or passing through. It all connects back to people.
It does. It does.
Well, speaking of people, I know that you're very vocal about mentoring and supporting early career professionals, which I
Mm-hmm.
love, and all of us need to do more of that. So, share with our audience. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but I'd love for them to hear more about how you're giving back.
So I'm involved a lot with different outreach opportunities. We partner with either Iowa State or University of Wisconsin Platteville, and we can either go to a school, an underrepresented school, and they bring different younger girls, typically tends to be girls, but there could be some boys in there, and we do STEM activities. So we did zombie apocalypse, which was really kind of an interesting concept, but the students had like 6 different workstations that they had to do different things. And within those activities, there was a clue, and that clue allowed them to get to the next step, to the next activity. And so the goal was which group could finish all the activities and get all the clues so that they could develop their final um, big, I guess, deliverable.
Okay.
And do it correctly. So not only did they have to build it, but it actually had to work. And it was basically getting water from a water tower down to a house. And so they
Oh,
had to
okay.
build the house, they had to build the water tower, and all of these clues allowed them to do it. And it took the whole day. So you had the morning, and then we had lunch in the afternoon. And all of the attendees, so they started off, it was a bunch of different schools. So a lot of the people didn't know one another. They had to learn to work together. And by the end of the day, they had gotten to know one another. They were working together. They were proposing different, ways to solve problems. And they all said that if we came back again, they would like to attend another
Oh,
event.
wow.
And so it was really powerful. And when you see that, and when you see all of them start off very intimidated and whatnot, and then grow throughout the whole entire day, it's very rewarding. So that
Yep.
was one outreach program that we do. Um, Iowa State has a Go Further, and it's 8th through 10th grade girls that they bring in and do something similar, but it's not a full day. You have them for 45 minutes to an hour, and you put together an activity. So we built bridges with Legos, and they had to support a certain amount of weight. And they had a
Oh, I want to
budget.
do that now. That
Yeah,
sounds like fun.
yeah. They had a budget to buy parts so that they could
Oh,
build
that's
their bridge.
awesome.
Yeah,
That was
so it was,
probably part of your project management hat got put on,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So that was a lot of fun, but it's those type of things that really inspire girls to want to maybe investigate something in a STEM career.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you're also on a board, correct? With Platteville? Did I get
Yeah,
that right? Or
I sit on the Women in Science and Engineering at UW Platteville, and then I sit on the Women in Science and Engineering board at Iowa State, the
yeah.
advisory board.
And she's also, by the way, underselling herself because she also does work with the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE, correct?
I do. I do. We put together a big professional development event at the Wisconsin, the La Crosse campus, and
Okay.
brought in women from all over Wisconsin
Yeah.
to go to do that. It was very successful.
Yeah. And then the last place, and honestly, probably the place we connected because we do work for a large company, is women in manufacturing. Many of you listening have probably heard of that. At our company, we have our own, I'll call it mini chapters, what I'm going to call it. And we met on the communication subcommittee. So
Yes.
she is very involved in giving back, not only to, I'll call it early talent, but broader, talent that's obviously already started their career. So I'm going to ask you a tougher question. What is
Okay.
one thing you think today's leaders must do to truly invest in the next generation, especially considering our audience, young women who are considering STEM or a more, I'll say, a career that's not as popular or prevalent for women?
Um, I, I thought about this a lot because a lot of us, especially when you're younger, you're looking for that recognition from a leader. And it could
Mm,
be your direct manager, it could be someone above you. And just having someone come up and even know your name, a leader know your name, that's a big deal. So I would say for leaders today, they need to get to know some of the people that work for them
mm,
and recognize what they're doing. It goes a long way to really wanting um, to do that work long term for that company. And I'll give an example. When I first started at Trane back in the 1990s, there was a AHRI show. At that time, it was ASHRAE show, and Trane had a unit, a chiller that was on site and it was running. And I was actually monitor a part of the booth for representing our software. So Trane has software that simulates HVAC systems and energy consumption. And I gave we had our little walkthrough with the leaders um, before the show opened. And so I gave my presentation. I was really nervous. It was the first time
Oh,
I
I
had
bet you're like first
presenting.
job, first big
Yeah,
presentation. Oh gosh.
presenting to leaders, and Jim Schultz, who happened to be the head of Trane at that time, afterwards came up and just said, "I wanted to let you know you did a great job." And that just
Mm,
meant a lot to me. I mean, it was like, wow, he didn't have to come and do that. And so it made me want to just work harder and learn more because I wanted to continue to do a good job. So,
mm. I love that because it's small and doable because leaders
yeah,
are asked a lot to do a lot of things these days, but it tells us A, the small things matter, and
yes.
B, to slow down and do the small things. Like it doesn't have to be a huge knock it out of the park moment.
Right. Exactly. It could be, you're on a call and say, I was here and I wanted to recognize this team that, showed me how the chiller ran or whatever.
Right.
It doesn't have to be big, but acknowledging that in front of others is a big deal.
Yep. Well, I want to talk about influences. We're going to talk a little bit about your daughter. So
Yeah.
you mentioned early on that your dad was a huge influence. Obviously, he didn't overly encourage you, but you did end up going down that path. He encouraged you to pursue engineering before it was common for women. It's still not super common, but it was less common then. I'm curious how his example shaped you as a mentor, especially with your own daughter, who, as I understand it, is currently studying engineering.
She will be a senior at Iowa State studying mechanical engineering. And what's
Yep.
interesting is that none of my children wanted to be engineers. So I,
And your
you
heart
know,
was
would-
like,
yeah,
oh, wait a minute.
yeah, I would say, engineering is a really good field. And then they're like, no, mom, we don't want to be an engineer. We don't want to be an engineer. My oldest son, who's an electrical engineer now, was going to be a doctor. Actually, that's what he wanted to be. He applied for early acceptance to one of his first schools, got it, and we're sitting downstairs in our family room around Christmas time, and he says, "Mom, I don't want to be a doctor. I want to be an engineer." And I'm like,
And you're
well,
like, what just
yeah.
happened?
I'm like, well, Ben, the school you applied to doesn't have engineering. What are you going to do? He said, oh, I've already thought it out. I'm going to go to Minnesota Duluth. He said, I'm going to apply today. And he said, I'm going to get in. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he applied and he got in, and he started as a chemical engineer and switched to electrical,
Oh
but he
gosh,
did get
bless
his
him. I'm a
electrical.
chemical engineer.
Yeah.
There's no way I'd have touched electrical engineering at all.
Yeah, I would not have touched electrical either. The one or two classes we had to take were terrible.
Yep. I
But
avoided them altogether, Jennifer.
yeah,
You're braver than
yeah.
me.
It was a requirement for us. We had to
Okay.
take electrical. Not my favorite classes, but I got through it. But Helen wanted to be a pharmacist, and she was going to
Oh,
be
I
a
looked at that
pharmacist.
too. That's funny. Keep
Yep,
going.
up until she was going into her senior year, and then she decided no, she wasn't going to be a pharmacist because you had to go to school too many years. She
Mm.
wanted to get out in 4 years. And so I'm like, I can understand that. So she went the mechanical engineering route.
So how do you think it shaped you as a mentor? Like with your children and the women and men you're impacting in the universities?
So one of the things that both Ben and Helen have said were, Mom, you were a great example, even though we told you we weren't going to be engineers when it came down to finally deciding. You made things look fun. And it's like,
There's that
oh,
positivity thing again,
okay.
right?
Yeah, yep. And, you never overly like encourage us to go into engineering. You wanted us to make our own path, which I did. And I did the get a job in something that will support you the way you want to be supported. So they had that, and they both chose engineering. So, like I said earlier, I think leading by example is very important.
Yeah, interesting. So I've not done much project management in my life. I've done little projects, right, but not a focused effort. But I think it was in your speech, you described it as like riding a bike on fire in hell, is how you described it. But clearly you have done well. And so I jokingly say you clearly thrived in the chaos. What do you think makes leading complex projects so fulfilling for you? And how do you stay grounded when everything's on fire?
Um, leading leading complex projects is problem solving, and
Mm,
I love to problem solve. And no two problems are ever the same. So you might have a
mm,
problem that's impacting schedule, or you might have a problem that's impacting cost. But they're never the same for any two projects. So it's always something new. And I thrive on um, different. So I don't like to do the same thing all the time. If I
mm.
get bored, if I get bored, I tend.
I'm laughing because I'm just like you. Like when I
Yeah.
get bored, I'm like, okay, well, can we find
Yeah.
something else new to occupy
Yeah,
my brain with?
absolutely. So it's like if I get bored, it's time to move on, because when I'm bored, I don't have that passion,
Mm,
and I don't feel like I do as good of a job. So
mm,
I like problem solving, and one of the things that almost anyone that is around me can tell you is that I don't get upset often. I'm pretty even keeled. I don't raise my voice very often. And when we've had problems, some of my team members have come in, and it's like, how is it that we always come in and we know that things are on fire, blowing up, we're going to be late, and you always calm us down and get us to the point where we can solve the problem. Or if not solve it,
mm.
at least mitigate it.
Yep.
It's like you have this calming persona. And
Oh,
I'm
I
like,
would totally
oh.
agree with that.
So I guess it's just I like problem solving, and I'm going to find a way to fix a problem.
I think it's funny though. I think you can take the God-given temperament that you have, I'll call it. Like you have a very calming presence. Mine's not as calming, but I think I bring the okay, we've got this. Let's just
Yep.
step back. Let's take a breath. We're going to do this together kind of mentality. And they both have the same effect. They're just different in approach. So I think
Hmm.
for our listeners, it's like looking at your own temperament and seeing how you can best apply that in
Yeah.
a time of crisis.
Yep. My kids would tell me if I raise my voice, they know they're in trouble and that
Are
they
you the
gotta
full
fix
name
it.
person?
Yeah, I am. I am.
I joked with my mom just this morning. If you ever get the mom voice, it's game over. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a much older person now, but even now, the mom voice, I know when it comes out.
Yeah, my mom's the same way,
Do
and
you have
I'm
the
the
mom
same
voice,
way.
Jennifer?
I do
I bet you
occasionally.
do.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, one place we love to end, I'll call it the last real question, is what are one or two pieces of advice that you would offer to women stepping in male dominated industries? It could be engineering, manufacturing, or others. I'm trying to get at what would you want them to know? Like, what would you want that young Jennifer to know today?
I think it's don't give up. You know, your people will tell you that there's a definite path, a career path that you should follow. And anyone that knows me knows that I've had roles in probably every single function
Yeah,
from,
actually say more about that. I should have asked the
okay.
question. Tell the listeners kind of some of your various roles.
So I started off in product marketing. And from there, I went into recruiting. I was a recruiter because my marketing job, I launched a new product. It was an absorption chiller way back in the early 90s. And I traveled all over. At that time, we traveled and we like shipped a absorption chiller all over
Oh
the country.
gosh.
And
But that was a little price prohibitive, but keep going.
yeah, they would never do that now. But I traveled with the chiller and I love traveling. And so when that was coming to an end, there was an opportunity to recruit for field sales and marketing engineers. And at that time, all the recruiting was done out of La Crosse and it was done for all of our sales offices. So I got to
Mm.
travel all over the country visiting universities. And so I had a list of colleges that I wanted my kids to go to based on my
You were
visit
the best college
universities.
counselor ever.
I got married and I had children, and so traveling all over wasn't beneficial. So I moved into pricing, and I supported the North America pricing team. And I did that, and I developed some different tools for forecasting and analysis. And the CFO at that time said, you know, you've gotten really good at this, and he said you should try finance. It's something you haven't done yet. So he kind of just picked me up and put me into an equipment finance
My
leader
gosh, that
position.
terrifies me, but keep
Yeah.
going.
And so I did that for 5 years, and then I took a break actually from work
Okay.
from Trane, and I became a teller at a bank. So I could take
Oh,
my
that's interesting. I did not know
yeah,
this part of the story.
yeah. So I would take my kids to school, drop them off, and pick them up. And that I knew wasn't sustainable, but it allowed me to reconnect with my kids. And then I
Mm,
came back to train as the Latin America pricing leader.
mm.
Um, and, and that was the role I had up until my project management. So,
Okay.
yeah.
But I mean, I want folks that are listening to this or folks that have children, like just because you have, in Jennifer's case, an engineering degree, like there's a lot of things that you can do. Like if you went back and found the 22-year-old me coming out of college, and if you fast forward and said, this is where you're going to end up, I'd have been like, Shh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, whatever. I'm going to end up talking to salespeople. I don't think so. That's not going to
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah. Exactly. I would never put me where I am right now either.
Yeah.
So
Well, I
that's
got
my
you a little off track, but can you go back and repeat your advice just so I got you a little off track on that one?
yeah. So my advice is never give up, and there's always a different path
Mm.
if you can't get to where you want to go on the designated path, try going
Mm.
around or doing
I
something
kind of
different
like the
with that.
undesignated path.
Yeah. Yeah. But so yeah, don't give up. Just be persistent. Make sure that whatever you're doing gives you passion. You have that passion, and you know, positivity goes a long way
Mm.
in um, how people see you and how people respond to different challenges.
That is so true. I couldn't end that better myself. So, one of my favorite poems is by Robert Frost called The Road Less Traveled. And I think that would describe Jennifer's experience and her success in a very short period. So, where can folks find you, Jennifer? Where do you hang out on the internet?
LinkedIn's the best place to find me. I do go on that every day. It's probably the first thing I do in the morning.
Mm.
And Shannon's normally always posted, so I get to start my day with Shannon. But yeah, LinkedIn.
Okay, perfect. So look for Jennifer Black on LinkedIn. Connect with Jennifer, get to know her. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being here today. It was so much fun. It was like a little girls' chat.
Thank you for having me, Shannon.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I will see you soon on the next episode of the Empowering Women podcast. Until then, continue to inspire your fire within. I will see you later. Bye, everybody.
Bye bye.